The full episode is now available on Patreon and YouTube memberships. Please see the link in the description for more details.
I have to say though, the 2007-2008 writer's strike, that's what it's called, is it's a weird one because it tanked a lot of shows, but it also may have saved some. So I was telling you about this a while ago, but one of the things that the last writer's strike did was cut Breaking Bad down a little. So it's supposed to have like 9 episodes. I think it ended up with 7 episodes. Breaking Bad season 1. Let me look this up real quick. Sorry to the audience. Let me look this up. It has 7 episodes. So apparently, Hank Schrader, Walt's brother-in-law, was supposed to die in the first season of Breaking Bad, but because the writer's strike went down, they were supposed to ship with 7 episodes instead of 9. And I'm glad that went down, because if that were to happen, we never would have gotten, or maybe we would have, but might have been a lot of different, one of the best episodes in television history, Ozymandias, which is the last episode of Breaking Bad ever.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But at the same time, it also tanked other shows. Apparently, there were several shows, Jericho being one of them. You remember Jericho? The one about the post-apocalyptic United States Civil War? It didn't tank it so much as because like work stopped on the episodes, people had to like kind of move on and do other stuff. And this happened with a lot of shows. Like apparently Heroes suffered because the writing was a shit. After a while, Heroes, the show about the save the cheerleaders, save the world.
Yeah.
Dexter apparently suffered after a while.
Was My Name is Earl? Was that during that period?
I think so. It might have suffered from it. I wish Phil the Issues guy was like awake in here because
he's an expert on this, especially the time period.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So like he's the TV guy, but I do know that like for some series, like if there's no work being done on it, people have to work. People have to get that bread, and they eventually go their separate ways, and it's very hard to get everybody back together. That was the problem with Firefly. Like, getting all those actors back and Joss Whedon back for Firefly, that was a pain in the ass, and no one was going to do that. So
yeah, I mean, for reunions, you essentially need to have every single person in the cast have a failed career. Like, and it's hard to have all of, like, especially if the cast is big, it's hard to have them all fail at once, right? Mm-hmm. You know, like when people are like, oh, we need to have a Community movie. It's like, well, you got to get Dan Harmon off of Rick and Morty, and you got to get Donald Glover, you know, off of whatever he's doing, Atlanta, and then, pull them back in, like you've got to have everybody fail simultaneously.
Fail or retired, or not doing anything, like
right,
which is
one of the nice things about Star Trek was the fact that like Star Trek was like people are cursed in Star Trek that like whenever you did Star Trek you never did anything else other than Star Trek, which was fantastic because then they could always come back. Is
that true though? Like Leonard Nimoy,
Leonard Nimoy did some great directing, and then William Shatner went on to do like T.J. Hooker and Rescue 911 and stuff like that. But he was never like super successful, so he was able to always come back for movies. Everybody else in the original Star Trek never did anything else. And then TNG comes along, right? And it's like, well, usually like the lead goes on. So Patrick Stewart did some other stuff. Mm-hmm. And then everybody else didn't do anything. Like Brent Spiner,
But do they really have to do anything? Apparently, like, reruns are so profitable for some shows that are very successful. I remember The Cosby Show. There was one of the characters on The Cosby Show who was, like, the residuals from the reruns were so good that he could just sit back and do nothing. But then when Bill Cosby got arrested and they stopped airing reruns of The Cosby Show, he had to go out and get a job. It's like a whole thing. I'm sure people know what I'm talking about.
Oh, but, really? That's funny. Are you talking about the actor? I think it's the... Are you talking about the actor that played his son, that played Theo?
I think so. I think it was
because it is true that I all of a sudden saw him back again in acting. Malcolm Jamal Warner, like all of a sudden, like after like 20 years of not being in acting, he was like back. Mm-hmm. So I mean, he's. What's funny is that he's like still good. Like he's still a fine actor. So it was like, oh, you could just play roles. You're good at that.
or the actors from Friends, like they all like get a massive residuals from Friends or Jerry Seinfeld. Right. And Seinfeld, like I'm pretty sure Kramer can live off He doesn't have to do stand-up comedies where he calls people the N-word. He can just live off Seinfeld. He's fine.
Right. Seinfeld can have horribly boring interviews with other comedians about comedy.
You don't like Friends and Cars Getting Coffee? You don't like that?
That show is horrible. It is so horrible. I tried watching a couple episodes, and at first because he gets like these big name like comedians, and I'm like, oh my god, they're gonna be so interesting. And then he's the worst interviewer.
Oh.
He spends like it's like 75% of the time he's talking, and it's not even about anything interesting. And they're talking about like coffee and cars. And you're like, no. The whole point of a great interviewer is that you make the other person look good, you know? That you're not the one talking, you know? Like,
it's funny you say that, because I really hate when comedians start doing like this whole interview thing, because it started to become super popular when Joe Rogan did it. And I hate to say, I hate to even call Rogan a comedian, because he's so bad at what he does. And every now and then he'll have another comedian on his podcast, and they'll like sit there and talk about comedy like they're Aristotle. It's like, no, you're not. You're not even that good. The only reason anyone gives you any attention is because of your massively successful podcast. You're not a comedian. You're not that funny.
I mean, he's a completely forgettable. I mean, look, Joe Rogan was like, he was a pretty good comedian, but at the same time, back in the day, but he wasn't edgy. He wasn't like that interesting. Like, he will not be remembered as like, he's not fucking George Carlin, like, you're not going to fucking remember him for being a great comic. You're going to remember as like, oh, he was the guy from Fear Factor who then had a podcast where he smoked weed and had on like weird conspiracy theory people, and then it became like massively successful. Like, that's what he's going to be remembered for. But no, it's the same with Jerry Seinfeld. No one's going to remember Jerry Seinfeld for his comedy. His fucking comedy was fucking horrible.
You think so? I thought it was all right.
Yeah, it was fine. It was fine. It was fine. I don't think I will not say it's horrible. But I mean, there's a lot of these people. Like, who started as a stand-up comic? The guy Bob Saget, obviously, but the other one, Joey, Dave Coulier was also a stand-up comic. And Dave Coulier, you watch it, yeah, he's fine. He's a stand-up comic. You understand why he was a professional stand-up comic, but he's not going to be remembered. Bob Saget might be remembered for being a great stand-up comic. He was really good.
That's true. Jim Carrey was a stand-up comic for a little bit. I think Adam Sandler might have been. Jay Leno.
Yeah. But Jay Leno is kind of a legend. Jay Leno was a really good stand-up comic.
Was he? I've never seen his stuff.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you should check it out sometime. It's like really good. I mean, there's some people that I mean, that's the thing, is like, you're remembered as well for being kind of revolutionary. I mean, let's like, you gotta remember, like, Ellen DeGeneres was a really revolutionary stand-up comic before she like had her show. The same with I want to say who's the woman who was in the Flintstones movie?
Rosie O'Donnell.
Yeah, Rosie O'Donnell was a huge stand-up comic. Roseanne Barr, enormous stand-up comic.
Oh yeah.
And they sort of changed the craft and everything. I mean, people are going to remember Dane Cook. I mean, Dane Cook was enormous. Andrew Dice Clay was enormous, and they kind of changed the craft. People will remember Bill Burr. People will remember Chappelle, but no one's going to remember fucking Joe Rogan for a stand-up.
This all of a sudden turned into just bashing on Joe Rogan.
I know. How did we get on this?
But no, like, so the writer's strike.
Writer's strike.
It's a shame that like it will impact Hedge Knight, because like, yeah, I do want. I want this.
I think it'll have some very minor effects on House of the Dragon, but almost for the reason that George was explaining in his blog, that everything's compartmentalized, that it won't affect it that much. Like, it used to be the case, as he was saying, that like the writer would be invited to set, and the actors, when they're going through their lines, would be like saying stuff, and if something didn't work, you could change the line, and the writer would help you write the new line, and then, you know, the director, whoever, didn't like it, and they could change the script on the spot. Now that's not really done, well, because the writers aren't there, and like union-wise, no one that's not a writer is allowed to write. So you're just kind of stuck. You're stuck with the words that are on that page, and nothing's going to change. You know.
Well, there could be
can't go to a rewrite.
There could be anonymous writers coming off the picket line to you know, and do it,
like scabs,
get paid under the table. It's a thing that's possible. But I remember when season 1 of House of the Dragon just finished, Ryan Condal came out and said that, like, as it was in the editing, they were writing season 2, so they're probably not going to be writing season 3 as season 2 is finishing up, like, its whole thing. So, which... It kind of annoys me. Also, at the same time, Andor may get fucked up by this. Season 2 Andor.
That's too bad.
That's
too bad.
It may. According to these guys, like, everything for the most part is finished, but if there's any rewrites, I guess Tony Gilroy is not allowed to come in and rewrite anything that needs to be rewritten on the fly. Like, he only can just direct episodes, and that's it. Which, I don't know about that. Maybe he'll do something under the table, which I hope he does. But at the same time, like, I get it. It's, it kind of sucks for Hedge Knight, because I did want HBO to do this thing where House of the Dragon Season 3 comes out, it's over, Hedge Knight Season 1 begins.
Hedge Knight.
And then Season 4 comes in.
I'm really looking forward to Hedge Knight. I'm looking forward to Hedge Knight much, much more than House of the Dragon.
Really?
Like, I'm really... Yeah, oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely.
House of the Dragon still got some good stuff, you know? We still got to get to Blood and Cheese and Battle of the Gullet and all that.
I'm just way more into those stories. Like, those characters and those stories are just so much more interesting. You know, so I'm more emotionally invested in that being put to screen. But
really, you're not invested into seeing, like, the Nymeria spinoff, if that ever comes out, or the Corlys Velaryon spinoff, or the ET spinoff. You know, all that crap that has nothing to do with the Iron Throne, or dragons. You really know?
Not really. I mean, that's all fine. I mean, I'm invested somewhat because of the topic, but it's like, there's difference between, like, you know, adapting a topic and adapting a character.
Right.
You know, like a character where you read a story and you had an emotional reaction and you felt, you know, sympathy and empathy and connection to a character going through a story versus, like, a topic, you know.
I see what you mean. I mean,
it's the same as, like, conceptually, like, you know, it's like, in the very first Community episode, he goes on a speech and he's like, "We're humans, we connect with things. That's why we're the types of people, we can name this pencil Steve, and then when I break it, we feel bad." And then, like, the table of people goes, "Aw," like, right? Like, the idea is that, like, you know, once you kind of, like, make something into a character and anthropomorphize it, then you care about it. But, like, and something in the abstract, you don't really care. So I think it's the same with House of the Dragon. These characters are very more abstract than they are, like, real fleshed out characters. I mean, they're more characters now. I mean, House of the Dragon characters are more real characters than Fire and Blood characters ever were. So.
I feel like I would really like Community if I just sat down and watched it, because I love Scrubs, and I feel like Community is kind of like a Scrubs type of situation, kind of like the same sense of humor. But I just, like, as Community was coming out, I didn't have TV anymore, like, or cable or satellite or anything, so I should sit down and binge Community.
It's a hell of a lot darker than
Scrubs?
Scrubs.
Really?
Yeah. Scrubs have some sniffles in various episodes, but Community is very different. I mean, Community, you'll see it's closer to Rick and Morty than it is to Scrubs.
Oh shit, really? Then I should definitely binge it, because I got like, I will say, and the person in my server who made this very good point, some shows that were made back in the day, like 20 years ago, even 15 years ago, some of them weren't made to be binged, and that's so true. That is true. Like, there are some shows that are made to be binge, and Netflix, I feel like, started that whole trend. But nowadays, like back then, not so much. Not so much. Like I'm sure you'll agree with me. Like The Wire was not really a show you'd binge. It's more of a show like you watch one episode, you sit back, you enjoy it, you take it in, and it is what it is, and then you go on to the next one.
Well, I would disagree with you on The Wire. I think The Wire is a very bingeable show, but I think the classic one that I heard that people binge that you shouldn't binge is Mad Men. That like. Yeah, because doesn't Mad Men kind of begin each episode with him like exiting his house or something in kind of same fashion or something? But there's something to do with like time passing and how long he's getting away with his scheme. And you don't really get that if you're binging. Like you're not really understanding like the build up and tension within him because, you know, he's lying and he's doing it for so long.
I actually have not seen Mad Men. That was on the list. So you're saying I shouldn't binge it?
I mean, I have only seen a few episodes of Mad Men. I mean, I've heard people say that about Mad Men, that like you, emotionally speaking, watching it week to week is a very different experience than binging it.
That's true. Like there is something about like waiting until like the very next week to watch something. Like the anticipation builds and it's there.
So I was a huge fan of Angel, and Angel. Eventually, the show got into an act structure where they used to joke because, you know, the things are usually in 3 acts, right? But because they would end all of their shows on they started ending all of their shows on cliffhangers, and so they started joking that they would do the 3 acts 3-1-2, and all their episodes were 3-1-2 after that. And I remember watching it like week to week. And you'd get to the end of the episode and you'd be like, no, what? We're in the middle of the story. No. I've got to wait an entire week. What? No. And binging, you just wouldn't have that experience. Like there was such, like, because the cliffhanger, there'd be a huge tragedy, but also you felt the tragedy because you had to wait a week.
Yeah.
So like, there was that kind of aspect to it, that everything, you know, but, yeah, I've been watching Barry and this season, and every episode is a cliffhanger now. And you're like, and there's no previews.
Well, I was actually gonna start Barry because you told me about it a while ago. I think you told me about it like a year or 2 ago to start Barry because it's really good. So I was like, you know what, season 4 is coming up. I'm gonna watch some recaps of it. There's a YouTuber who does recaps of the entire like a 30-minute recap of like seasons 1, 2, and 3, and I watched the recaps. I know. I'm sure you probably wanted me to watch each individual episode. I know. I just don't want to like.
It's a short show. It's not even a long show. It's like 30-minute episodes, 8-episode seasons.
The funny thing about Barry is based off the recap. It's fucking funny. Like there's like an element of dark comedy to it that I kind of like. So I'm like, okay.
Okay. So the problem with the recap is he might take all the jokes and like put it in the recap, but like the thing about Barry is the show starts out like 70% dark, 30% jokes, and then every subsequent season the ratio of darkness increases and the ratio of jokes decrease. So it starts out like 70-30, then it becomes like 80-20, and then it becomes like 90-10. And then it's like, now this season's like 95-5.
Really?
Like there's hardly any jokes.
Now that Barry's in jail, is it still fun as it was in the first 1 to 2 or 3 seasons?
I mean, he's not in jail long.
Oh, never mind then.
So
never mind. I'll actually check out season 4. I know. It's just sometimes like a show looks good, but it's like it's not enough to like hook me in. For example, I subscribe to this one YouTuber called Movie Recaps, and he just uploaded the recap, 14-15 minutes, the recap, explanation, synopsis, plot detail of Dungeons and Dragons: Thieves Among Us. Dungeons and Dragons: Thieves Among Us looks like a show. Looks like a movie I'd want to watch, but not really. And it's hard to explain.
Yeah, it's like a movie you see on a plane.
Yeah, and the guy gets through it quickly, so whatever. And but no, I will start watching Barry now.
This is like my wife like doesn't have the time or desire to watch a lot of things, so she reads the recaps on Wikipedia.
Oh, that's horrible. That I wouldn't do. That I wouldn't do. No.
You know, it's funny because I was watching like a Patrick H. Williams like video the other day, and he was talking about how if you read Wikipedia about the movie Miami Vice, this is there's like a one line where they're like, oh, and in this scene, like they go and they have this discussion, and he's like, that's the line, that's the synopsis of what happened. But if you actually watch the scene, it's like in the middle of this conversation, one of the characters like turns out and looks out onto the ocean, and then turns back, and there's like a whole bunch of seconds where he's like staring off into the ocean in the middle of this conversation, and then he like looks back and like continues on, and you're supposed to think about how like he thinks about, you know, freedom and is the belongingness of something else, you know, by him looking out in the ocean, but that's all lost in the synopsis, right? So like you lose the human element, you lose the emotional element by just like reading what happened, like, you know, by just thinking like, oh, well, I know the plot, I know A, B, C, D, E happened. Well, you know, you don't get the feeling, which is the whole point.
Yeah, I get what you mean, and I got flack for what I said about The Sopranos, how I skipped a couple episodes, but and
you're probably gonna get flacked by saying that The Wire is not bingeable, because so many people like they start The Wire and then they're like, oh my god, this is incredible, and then the next thing you know, it's dawn.
You're gonna hate me.
You know?
I did binge The Wire, but I didn't think it was as incredible as you thought it was, because I know you like season 1 and 4 a lot. I like season 3. I think it's the best one. Season 5 was terrible. That was absolute terrible.
Season 5, everybody hates season 5. Yeah.
Season 5 might have been affected by the writer's strike. I don't know. I haven't looked it up, but if it was, it wouldn't surprise me. That was just not good. And fucking McNulty.
No. I mean, it was just. I don't think it was that. I think it was just like the story was so outlandishly dumb that everybody's like, come on. Like,
yeah.
Yeah, so.
But no, I did binge all of The Wire, and it was an experience. Sopranos, on the other hand, has a lot of like moments and scenes and character arcs, if you can call them that go absolutely nowhere. One example is, because people got on my dick about this, and to those people I ask you, Meadows' adventures in college, that's required viewing. The whole storyline, with AJ just being a whatever. By the way, AJ makes me hate teenagers so much, like more than I already do. I fucking hate kids, and I hate it. 99% of AJ's scenes throughout the entire series are trash and stupid and dumb. Like, I don't care.
Yeah.
You know, like the only like even some of Carmela's storylines. Like, I got to the one where I saw the one that you told me about, where she starts dating the principal. It was like,
yeah.
Okay, like a lot of it doesn't really go anywhere. Some episodes entirely are just pointless. Like the one where the episode titled Christopher. It's not about the character Christopher, the main character. It's about Christopher Columbus. Have you heard? I'm sure you've seen the clips of that one, or maybe you've seen that one.
I don't know. I don't think I have.
It's Christopher Columbus's day is coming around, and the mafia is reading the boys. They're reading the news that Native Americans are going to protest Columbus Day. And you know, they're very upset, like, you know what this is? It's anti-Italian discrimination. And then AJ comes home from school and he's like, well, apparently they're saying that Columbus was a murderer and a rapist and a slaver. And then Tony gets upset. That's not true. He founded America, and in this household, Columbus is a hero. Like, the entire episode is a nothing burger. It's a nothing. Nothing happens, doesn't advance the plot, nothing goes down. And there are multiple episodes like that, so... Yeah, that's why...
Yeah. I mean, what's funny about Breaking Bad is I would say that, like, not... Like, every episode is essential, but there's definitely some storylines that are not essential.
Oh, yeah, you were telling me about this, yeah.
You know, like, where on, like the shoplifting plot, like, that just disappears.
With Skyler's sister?
You know, there's stuff like that, you know, where you're like, oh, okay, you know. But that's about it. You know, I mean, there's a few things like, you know, Skyler trying to work at the car wash and things like, you know, there's a lot of these like weird storylines where they're trying to give the other actors some screen time, and they never seem to go anywhere. In the end, only like the Walter and Jesse stories like really mean anything in the end. So